Hey, swing batter, if you don't click subscribe and like, you know what happens? You get people like Scott Rolen in the Hall of Fame.
Welcome. I am your host, Brendan Lemieux. I am here on a mission for those that need to be in the Hall of Fame. I'm joined together by my favorite two people. Todd, how you doing, sir?
Oh, God, it's so great. It's so great to be alive. It's so great to be a Mets fan. We're so close. We're so close to pitchers and catchers. I'm so excited about this year.
You should be very...
You know why?
Love to know why.
Because I saw a picture on Twitter of a starting pitcher the Mets now have holding his Cy Young trophy.
Oh.
And I felt really good about the season coming up.
Was that a player in his 40s?
Might be.
It's
Might be.
Is he
Mr. K. Upton?
Is he?
Mr. K. Upton?
Is he?
Yes.
Is he?
Yes.
Is he white?
He is. He
So
is.
it definitely has a chance for the Hall of Fame. That's what you're telling me. And joined also.
This guy's going in the Hall of Fame. This guy's going in the Hall of Fame.
Fair. And joined also by my father. Dad, how are you today?
Good. I think I'm going to be a contrarian this afternoon about his Hall of Fame thing, just for the kicks.
I do like that. I like. I would like to know who's going to come and serve you grapes as you're doing this. I feel like that should be happening during this podcast. Well, as you all know,
Yeah, that guy gets Sundays off. He's not here.
as you all know, the beauty of Hall of Fame voting is that we're not one of the voters. None of us have been given that grace by dreaming of playing baseball. And so the writers in their testament being great is that they get to be part of that 300, almost 400 member club to vote for the Hall of Fame. And we're going to get into the Hall of Fame voting because it was, for all intents and purposes, shocking. We had an episode about Albert Bell. You can link to that over here and take a look and give that a listen. And we certainly had our opinions on Albert Bell and his 12-year playing career. But they voted in Scott Rolen. And that was pretty alarming considering looking at his stats post 30 were not anything to be admired. And his downfall was pretty great once you get beyond his 20s. And so I don't see it. I understand that the folks who vote in the Hall of Fame also vote in those wonderful Gold Glove awards and things of that nature. And in his 20s, he certainly performed very admirably. But if we're going to start going down the Scott Rolen path, I think there's a lot of folks that belong or deserve to be in that conversation. Todd, why don't you kick us off with your opinion of Scott Rolen in the Hall?
I want to preface this by saying this has nothing to do with Scott Rolen. It has everything to do with these absolutely obscene voters for the Hall of Fame who've just done everything they can to make the Hall of Fame into a joke. This is a museum about people who have accomplished great things in baseball, and what you've done is you've now set the barrier. Like, you flirted with this when you voted in Harold Baines, who for the love of all that's holy, I don't understand how he deserves to be in the Hall. But now you voted in a guy that has now, you've opened the door to, there's now the Rolen line for being in the Hall of Fame. You've blown it wide open. It used to be the Hall of Fame were for players that were just great baseball players that dominated their era. Scott Rolen did not dominate his era. I don't want to hear about the Gold Gloves, because tell me what's the standard for voting for a Gold Glove? Is it objective? I genuinely don't know. Maybe if you know better, leave it in the comments. The person with the highest fielding percentage, if it's objective, maybe there's something there. But he didn't win the most Gold Gloves of anybody at third base. It was the top 4 or 5. But I don't know what his competition was. I don't know if it was just, well, we voted for Rolen last year, and I really don't pay attention to third basemen in the National League at that time, so I'm just going to vote him in. Like, I didn't even know Rolen was being considered. That's how crazy this is. And then when I look and I find out in the first year that Rolen's on the ballot, only 10% of the voters voted for him. How do you claw your way up to 75%? I genuinely, I don't get it. I don't get it. At no point have I ever thought to myself, well, I'm really glad that Scott Rolen's offensively playing for my fantasy team. That's fantastic. If anything, if you're picking Rolen for your fantasy team, you're like, well, I'm hoping a prayer. Maybe he'll have one of his 10 home runs this year while he's in my lineup. I don't know. It bothers me. It bothers me what they've done. And yeah, I think, what was it? Somebody said, well, now you can do the Hall of Fame induction ceremony in the back of a Chili's to go. Like, that's how many people are excited about this guy going in. Like, who's going to Cooperstown now to go watch this guy get inducted? I'm waiting. I'm waiting for the list. Who's going? I'm not who cares? Right? Scott Rolen.
How many times did Scott Rolen make the All-Star team? Is that listed somewhere?
Yep, I have that for you.
Is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
And he played 17 years?
Yeah, 7 out of 17 years.
So there was a period of time
hold
when people thought he was
hold for 1 second. There was a break, Dad. So in 2006, he made it the All-Star, and he got the Gold Glove. Then he proceeded until 2010 when he popped up again and got the Gold Glove and an All-Star. And then in 2011, I think it was a Mercy Me concert where everyone was praising the Lord, and he got an All-Star mention because he's old, because his stats are terrible in that year. He only played 6
Did you say a Mercy Me concert?
Yes, because if his stats are so bad in 2011, and he got an All-Star ballot. So it was one of those, it's the end of his career.
Why don't you tell us what bad means?
Oh, 242 average on the year, 65 games played, a total of 5 home runs, 36 RBIs. They were like, he's 36. He's not coming, though he makes the All-Star game, and then he proceeds to play at 37, and his numbers are about the same. So he had 2 years later on in life at 35. Was his coup de grace moment. He went to Cincinnati, and at 35, he played really well. I'm sure there was an aid to him playing well at 35 in an era of 2010 where nobody was aided by any kind of performances. Sure, just smoothies. Tropicana Smoothie Cafe came out in 2010. I'm sure he liked it.
I think you got to check on that. I think that your era for the PEDs and stuff like that was really in the 90s and early 2000. Because what year? Barry Bonds retired, I think, in early 2000. And after
2004 or 2005 when he retired?
I'm thinking 4. But after that, there was really a lot of pressure on these guys.
Funny you mentioned that, because in 2000 and the great drop-off for him was in 2005. So in 2004 was his last 100. He played 142 games. The next time he played 142 games was 2006. However, his power numbers went down. 22 home runs was the most he hit after 2004. He had 22 at 20.
What year did we watch the McGuire-Sosa Jamba Juice contest?
That was 97.
Okay, so 97
was the rookie of the year.
2004, Bonds retires.
And his body type isn't exactly one of a spring outfielder or a running back. He's more of a middle linebacker. If you look at him in comparison to other third basemen of the era, he was a little wider, and he had knee issues because of the torque on his knees from his powerful swing, as Casey on the bat would say.
Well, I always thought Scott Rolen was a terrific player. He was known for his great glove. He was an offensive threat. I thought he was a great player. When I found out he was on the Hall of Fame, it didn't shock me. But the more you look at this, I really can't help but think that one of the reasons he's in the Hall of Fame is he's a likable guy. And that we go back to when we talked about Albert Bell. It seems to me if the sports writers like you got a better chance at getting the job. And if they don't, you're swimming uphill. Guys who don't talk to sports writers and put them down, Randy Johnson was like that, but there's no way you can keep him out. no matter how much you didn't like him. But, the more accommodating people are easier to vote for, it seems.
Yeah, the level to which the Hall of Fame has become about, am I the most likable guy on the ballot this year is stupid. It's just stupid. I don't know. And the other part is the pretentiousness of the writers talking about how they have to teach a lesson to somebody about by not voting for them. Like, give me a hot break. Nobody wants you teaching a lesson to anybody. And like, how do you can't sit? What are you teaching to Billy Wagner? What are you teaching to Billy Wagner? The guy had more Ks per 9 innings than I think any pitcher ever over the course of his career. What are you teaching to Billy Wagner? You're not teaching anything. What did you teach? So Scott Rolen, took writers out to breakfast over the course of the last 8 years to slowly get his percentages up? What do you do? What do you do? What was the big campaign that made Scott Rolen a 10% vote getter when he retired and it was on the ballot in 2017 to now that he's 75%? What goes through your head that all of a sudden you're like, I've been thinking about it, and Scott Rolen, she really should get my vote. He didn't do anything different. He's the same guy that retired that you didn't vote for the last 5-6 years. So what changed? What changed so dramatically now that you have to do that? Makes no sense to me. Jeff Kent's off the ballot now. What changed?
I never thought Jeff Kent was a Hall of Fame guy ever. I mean,
nobody thought Scott Rolen was till this year.
Jeff Kent's best years are when he batted after Barry Bonds, who got walked so many times that he just came up with men on base all the time.
Well, I could, again, he was on the Philadelphia Phillies until 2002, and then he went to the St. Louis Cardinals. And in 2002, the St. Louis Cardinals had a rather stud of a lineup with Mr. Albert Pujols, who also batted around Scott Rolen. So Scott Rolen was aided as well. These players get aided by great players. That's a matter of fact. Not an opinion, just a matter of fact. But Jeff Kent, for a second baseman at that time, was a power-hitting second baseman. And again, you go back to the writers and you say, why are we looking at... what are we looking at? What's the criteria? What was the standard? Why is Scott Rolen there and why are these other players not?
How about this? You want to talk about Gold Gloves? Everybody wants to talk about Gold Gloves. How he's like the 5th, 6th best by defensive WAR. If you can explain that, great. That's awesome. How about this? Fielding percentage over the course of your career as a third baseman.
Mm-hmm.
Number 1 is Placido Polanco. Number 2 is Mike Lowell. There are 3 guys still playing who are 3, 4, and 5. Chapman, Arenado, and Rendon. Then you have Brooks Robinson, had a 971.3 fielding percentage as a third baseman. I got to go through the likes of Eric Chavez, Jeff Blum, Juan Uribe, Alex Bregman, Don Money, Edgardo Alfonso. For God's sake, Edgardo Alfonso! Before I get to number 22, where Scott Rolen's tied with Hank Majeski and Don Wirt. Hank Majeski and Don Wirt. Don't come at me with the fielding thing. The guy's 22nd. Manny Machado's currently 21st. If this guy's in, Edgardo Alfonso should be in next year. What about Sean Green? Sean Green, offensively, probably the same type of player. You guys, Evan Longoria is 30th. Should he be in the Hall? Yeah.
After this season, yeah.
That's straight fielding percentage. And this is what I'm going to get. Oh, but he had more lower fielding percentage because he was going after more balls and then so it was difficult for him because he made plays look easy that other plays they had. That straight fielding percentage, you want to wax poetical about that, but if his offensive numbers are the equivalent of Sean Green and his defensive numbers are worse than Edgardo Alfonso, how's he in the Hall of Fame? That lethal combination together makes he's the Black Lion that suddenly assembles Voltron? Stop. He's not. Stop making him something he's not. Justin Turner's 36th, by the way.
And that's not going to go up any higher. Yeah, Alfonso played at the same time that Scott Rolen did, and he was considered better as far as a fielder is concerned. Where does Adrian Beltre? Mark,
because he didn't win the Gold Glove. He didn't win the Gold Gloves.
What about Adrian Beltre?
He didn't win the Gold Gloves.
Adrian Beltre played third base, similar era as Scott Rolen.
I think Adrian Beltre is going to get in. He's just
possible, but I mean, I'm just looking at people that are coming up or folks that played in his era or his time.
Is Beltre eligible yet?
How many years?
Oh, he better be. He should be a full bet. He should be a.
He played until 2018, Dad.
So
this year would be the first year for Adrian Beltre. He should be.
He should be a walk-in. I mean, how many hits did he get? That guy got a ton of hits.
He did. 3,166.
He's over 3,000.
Started with the Dodgers, went to Seattle, Boston, Texas.
3,000 hits, you should be in. Now, on this Hall of Fame thing, there's no doubt likability is a factor. Everybody loves Derek Jeter.
Loves him.
Derek Jeter's a great player. He was a winner. I have no argument with Derek Jeter being in the Hall of Fame. But if you were to lay his statistics next to his teammate, Alex Rodriguez, Alex Rodriguez is way better statistics, except PEDs. That's a big factor. That's what's keeping him out.
Well, the contract negotiations too, right? What A-Rod did to Seattle and what he did to the Texas Rangers, and then going to the Yankees, like that made him like he was the heel. But who cares?
Were the writers, if I remember correctly, the writers were not happy with the signings of A-Rod. When he went to Texas and signed for that, there's a lot of negative articles about A-Rod and going after this money and how he's hemorrhaging the team because of all the dollars. And now today, if you look at the money, it's not even discussed. So he was certainly a,
he was not a liked player at all. I mean, for all of those reasons, but his numbers are staggering.
This Rolen thing is just so stupid. I'm looking this up right now. His fielding percentage as a third baseman, do you know how many times in 17 years he finished in the top 10? Just the top 10 of fielding percentage for third baseman in the major leagues in his career.
In the top 10 in the year that he was playing it.
In the year
he's got what?
Top 10 of third base.
6 Gold Gloves that the writers say he's great, so you would gotta figure that he did it 6 times.
8.
Okay.
8 Gold Gloves. He finished in the top 10 times. The top 10. Guess how many times he was the top? 0.
That's crazy.
0. If you are a writer and you justified this vote because he was the best fielding third baseman between 1996 and 2012, and forget the last 5 years of his career because he was falling off, and you suck. Get Google, go look up stats, and tell me where his fielding percentage was. Because just admit the fact that you like him because any number of reasons, but because you think he didn't do PEDs and that's what made it better. And then go show me a picture of his forearms where his veins aren't popping out.
I mean,
this is getting stupider the more I look at it.
If you look at the voters, there's a consistency that's kind of alarming here of players that are named all the time. They typically, if you look at the list of Gold Glove winners, for instance, the last 3 years for pitcher is the same. Then it goes to Greinke for several years. And catcher, they have a couple changes, but at third base for the last several years, since 22 to 13, has been Arenado. He is the third base Gold Glove winner every single one of those years. You have Rizzo and Goldschmidt and Walker. Those are the folks that have won it over the last while. So there's been some changes, but there seems to be a theme of like similar players getting it, especially in the 2000s. Maddox won forever, 1990 until 2002. He won the Gold Glove as a pitcher. So I don't know what
I'm even looking up range factor. If you want to talk about his range, he finished top in the leagues in range once in 2002. No, 2002 and 1999. Those are the 2 years that he was in the top. He was the top third baseman when it came to range. There were years he didn't even finish in the top 10 when it came to range. Adrian Beltre had a better range than him in 2005.
So are we suggesting that for the Hall of Fame, we should just get Bill James and all the statistics and things we don't even know what they mean, like WAR and stuff like that, and just have a computer spit out who qualifies, like Brennan said, with certain algorithms, and just take the writers out? Is that what we think should happen?
the writers.
Just something objective, or stop pretending you actually care
The writers will never.
about the game other than your own personal biases based on the fact that somebody gave you an interview.
I don't think.
Because the fact that you're keeping a guy like Albert Bell out, but Scott Rolen goes in because Scott Rolen would sit and talk to you after the game, there's no justification for it at all. Nothing. And Mattingly's not in.
He has.
David Wright's not in. Why? Because they were injured?
So if you have multiple Gold Glove winners, Mattingly has 9. He has 9 Gold Gloves. Don Mattingly. You're talking.
How's he not in?
You're talking about players like Mark Grace. He has 4 Gold Gloves.
Mark Grace is a crime. That's a crime.
I would imagine. Frank Thomas is in, correct? He got in.
Yeah,
So Frank Thomas
Did
got
he
in.
make it in?
I'm sure he is.
Matt Williams, did Matt Williams get in or no? He has like a no.
No.
Okay. Yeah, he was.
What's that medication that Frank Thomas is shilling now with Doug Flutie for men over the age of 40?
I thought it was the.
What is it, like range factor or something like that?
It keeps you going.
Maybe if he should get David Wright and Don Mattingly to start sponsoring testosterone factor X or whatever after the age of 40 and send it to all the writers, and all of a sudden they'll be in.
Well, if we're going to go after Frank Thomas, I'm going to tell you something. You got to look at his numbers. That guy was an offensive.
You're not wrong.
He
Yeah, I
should
didn't-
be in the
You're
Hall
not.
of Fame.
I'm not.
He should be in
hold
the
on.
Hall of Fame.
You're not wrong about Frank.
I think he is an all.
But Frank Thomas, again, you can't dispute the fact if you look at his numbers and look at the era he's in, to say that he didn't use is kind of silly. Like at this point in time, I think assumptions of use has to be assumed. As Scott Rolen,
He's actively shilling testosterone on late night TV. How do we seriously don't think Thomas was on the juice?
I don't think any of these folks are wrong for doing it. So it's I can see now it's Testifit, Todd. That is what Frank Thomas is advertising. You two can perform, men.
Frank Thomas was voted in the Hall of Fame 2014. This PEDs, and I was all for kicking all these guys out and not putting them in the Hall of Fame, but I've mellowed. There was an era where everyone was on it, okay? So of all the people taking it, he still was the best, okay? So that's the argument for Bonds. You can say, yeah, it's obviously the way he looked, he was on the steroids, but everybody else was too, and they didn't do what Bonds did. So maybe we just got to say, look, compared to your era, if you were the superior one, just put him in the Hall of Fame. Okay?
And based on that, Robin Ventura should be in the Hall of Fame.
We got quite a list of people that Scott Rolen just made very happy because they're now Hall of Fame eligible.
Blew the gates open.
But
Blew the gates open.
when you're looking at the writers and again, the writers have this power they like, and we're in an era where we're moving towards the robotic umpire. And the umpires union are very upset about this. I think it will make the game go faster. I think it will make the questions of whether or not a strike is there or not go away. It will remove all of the arguments between the manager and the pitcher and the catcher and the ump, whether he calls this a strike or that a strike. And now they're just out there to pace a play and, whether or not the player's out at home or what have you. I think that's fantastic. We should go similarly to that with the Hall of Fame voting. And then once you put those algorithms in place for the era that they played in and how they statistically were good or bad or indifferent, I think that will immediately open the gates to lots of players that should be in the Hall of Fame for what they did. Steroids, at this point in time, it's almost like you've moved so far beyond it that it's like these folks have got to be in based on their performance. One could even argue Barry Bonds pre-steroids was fantastic and was going to be in the Hall of Fame regardless. His numbers were ridiculous, and they just got even more crazy. To make your argument, if you want to go watch some great matchups, watch Barry Bonds versus Eric Gagne. It was steroids on steroids, and who won? Barry Bonds. Dad, to your point, these players played against those people who were doing it, and that's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah, it was the era, the way back, no one knows about this, but the dead ball era when the guy who hit before Babe Ruth where 7 home runs would make you a home run champion. But the ball was dead, the way they played. So you just have to give credit to the ones who rose above all their opponents in that era. There was an era when guys would steal 100 bases in a year. Ricky Henderson, Maury Wills, that's crazy. So give them credit for doing that stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Anyway,
there's lots of players that should be considered. We'll put out some lists here this week for you to vote on. Check out our social media. We'll give you some list of folks that we think should be in the Hall of Fame.
I do think that, Todd, to your point, I think it's true. If you were to just put Scott Rolen's statistics, there are probably, is that the list you're thinking of, Brendan? A whole bunch of guys.
Yes.
Whose numbers exceed Scott Rolen that haven't been considered, that now maybe we ought to look at them.
And the other thing that I think gets overlooked in this is the likability factor, which is really frustrating from a standpoint. If you watch some of our podcasts, especially Storytime, and you look at the era baseball was in and what they were fighting, these older writers have this get off my lawn attitude about new baseball or baseball. A lot of them had a hard time with the players celebrating home runs or strikeouts at each other because that's not allowed in baseball. So can you imagine 60s, 70s voters, or I should say writers of players who are 20 to 30. So these men are individuals, again, mainly men. Obviously, I think 100% of them are men back in the 60s and 70s. In their 60s and 70s who grew up with all white baseball are now having African Americans in baseball and are now having to vote for them. So again, if you didn't act like this player that I voted for in the past, or you rubbed me the wrong way, I think that should be revisited as well. And there needs to be some kind of a straight line, if you will. Or we have a winding road, and I think there's a beauty that people find in baseball, the fact that it's arbitrary. It's up to the individual's beliefs. But going back era after era after era to see who was missed and who was not allowed or permitted because the writers didn't like that person or his personality at the time, looking just at the stats and the stories, because you can watch interviews of anybody who played with Albert Bell. Go back and watch your stories of him and crazy Albert Bell. Go back and look at what was occurring. And those people on his team loved having him on his team. Even the managers were like, every time I played, he's my number 4. He's my number 4 hitter every game, all the time, every day. Doesn't matter how angry or upset he was the day before or the day of. He's my number 4. And to have a manager have that on their team, that's a godsend. It would be great to have the managers vote on some of this stuff. Gold gloves. I would respect that. How many managers do we have in the game? First base coach, third base coach, and the managers. That's 3 votes per team. Vote for the Gold Glove that you believe is the best. Players that you've watched. I think that's a no-brainer. The writers love that power, and they don't want it. They don't want it to be taken away from them. They love having it. They love talking. It's almost like a high school, right? Talking about the prom king or the prom queen, or the pretty people, or the beautiful folks. The writers are the ugly folks that never did anything and got anywhere, sadly. And how many PEDs are they on to write stories up till 2 o'clock in the morning? Do we look at their personality and say, well, that guy was a real piece of work?
Well, you had several that would be voted out right there. But I mean, if you just look at the list of Gold Glove winners,
right?
If you look at the list by year, it's so streaky. It's so they get one name in their head, and that person can do no wrong for a number of years because now all of a sudden their reputation snowballs them. So to me, the idea that, holy cow, we're gonna just keep voting for this guy, right? Like Greinke, he was really the best fielding pitcher that many years in a row. 2014 through 2019, he was the best fielding pitcher. Really? Maybe he was. I don't know, but I just find it hard to believe that it's this streaky. Arenado, single-handedly from 2013 to now, best fielding third baseman. No one had a better year in any of those years. Maybe he did, but it just, to me, it looks like it's completely streaky.
Yeah, they take the lazy way out.
In an era where we all believe in stats and data, or at least to pretend, it's amazing the influence of writers and the influence of people who, again, they all talk to each other, right? They're all having conversation. It's not like these guys cover 162 games and don't talk to each other. All these writers that are going to vote are like, who are you voting for? Who's your in person? And again, to want to be part of the club, you want to have those conversations and feel like, oh yeah, I agree, Arenado's the guy. Oh look, I fit in with him. Because there's that social, I want to fit in with the other people. There's that idea that you camaraderie, if you will, of I'm in the club.
Right.
It's the worst thing in the world. It's again, whether it's the golf club or this club or that club, once you get in there, it's like, oh yes, I've made it, and now I get to act however I want, and I'm above all these other people here. Park my car, do this for me, do that for me. I've sacrificed, therefore I get. I think it would be great to see what the managers vote. It would be great just to have the managers vote and then to see it in comparison to the writers. And I would like to also see the managers and players of that time vote for the players who they thought were the Hall of Fame. Why aren't other players?
But that's the subjective. There should also be objective, algorithm-based, like you have the qualitative, I want the quant. But what's the quant data?
So here's what I would love
for this, right?
I'm fine with that. But if we're going to do subjective, which the writers are believing, I think it would be great to take the players of the era who they played with to say, like, that person is a Hall of Famer. When we played with that individual, we had to be cautious of that person. They would pitch around this person and they wouldn't be scared of that person, or they would worry about this and not worry about that, whether it's a pitcher or catch. The players know. The managers know. Buck Showalter could tell you right now who on the Phillies he's the most scared of and who he's not, regardless of how much money they got, who he's going to pitch around and who he's not. These folks know. And when you look back at an era like when Albert Bell was playing, he was feared by everybody. They would probably all vote him to be in the Hall of Fame because every year he terrorized folks. So when you look at that, I always go towards the who's in the trenches. Well, who would they vote for in the trenches? Who would they send out there? Who would they be most enamored with? And for an era, for 2 to 3 years, there may be that, but there are folks that stick in these guys' heads that when they played them, the way the bat sounded when the ball hit it, when they hit the ball, or the way that the catcher's mitt sounded when the pitcher was throwing his heat. It's just no-brainers when it comes to that. And I trust those. I trust the players. Heck, I'd even let the umps vote on that.
Yeah. Well, there's no doubt about it that it's subjective. Some people just don't want certain people in the Hall of Fame because they don't like them at all. Not just because, like the Albert Bell situation, but what about Sammy Sosa? Most people say, that guy shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, he was roided up. He used cork bats. when he got called in a Mitchell report, all of a sudden he didn't know how to speak English and he couldn't talk English. And you say, the guy's a fake and a phony, I don't in the Hall of Fame. Well, I would like to look at his numbers. Maybe his numbers don't add up to the Hall of Fame. He had some great years, but well, I don't know. It's taking out I like him and I don't like him is almost impossible.
Now, how do you have a guy who had over 600 home runs not in the Hall of Fame?
Is that Sosa?
He had 609 home runs. How is he not in the Hall of Fame? Why? Because, I mean, like, even with, this is my point, even with steroids, how many people hit 600 home runs?
Yeah.
Is Jim Tomei in the Hall of Fame?
I think he got put in. I think he did.
I think that, what year was that? Would that have been 20? No, 20 was Jeter and Larry Walker.
Because Jim Tomei has 612 home runs.
Yeah, Jim Tomei was voted in 2018.
Yep. Almost got 90% of the vote.
In his first year.
Sammy Sosa's trying to go white to improve his votes.
Yeah. So just to go back to the old man's nostalgia, 1995 Cleveland Indians, Albert Bell, Manny Ramirez, and Jim Tomey.
Jeez.
All not in the same.
Jiminy.
It's monsters.
Jiminy.
It's absolutely monsters.
And I would love to hear a pitcher say who they were most scared of. I bet it was Bell.
Probably.
I bet it was Bell. Okay, we're going to close this episode out with a game. And this is going to be a fun game because we're going to find out how much I can stump my father and my brother. So to start...
This will be, by the way, the idea of stumping me in this game is so easy. There is nothing about this.
This is all we talk about is contracts. But now I have a question to pose for you. And the first question, and Dad, you get to guess first. Todd, you get second guess, and I'll say who's closest. Who is the oldest person that was signed this offseason in Major League Baseball as a free agent?
I think that might be Justin Turner.
Very good guess. Todd, who says you?
It was that pitcher we talked about that was 43 years old. You said he was going to be a player manager.
Yeah.
Me. But it's old man.
You had a great joke about it. Do you remember your joke? He
was over the hill.
What's his?
Rich Hill.
There you go, everybody. Todd guessed it winner on the first game. Rich Hill is the oldest at 42.8 years old, just beating Nelson Cruz at 42.5. And the best part about that is he gets $8 million a year. Dad, your guess of Justin Turner's not bad, but 38. He's 38 years old. All right?
Yeah, I mean, Verlander's older than Turner.
This is a much harder part of the game. This is going with the youngest free agent that has been signed this offseason. The youngest, which is a very hard part of the
wow.
And again, it's somebody...
Not an extension.
It's not an extension. It's somebody who we have talked about. Todd, I'm going to give you the first guess. Who is the youngest player that was in free agency that has signed a deal?
Was it Carlos Correa?
That's a good guess. Dad, what say you?
Guys, I'm thinking of, I know are wrong, but just to end the game, I will say Trey Turner, but that's not right.
No. Trey Turner is a little bit older. Carlos Correa is there. He's there, but the guy that, Todd, you actually liked this signing a lot, Cody Bellinger, is the youngest free agent signing this offseason with the Cubs on a one-year deal. He is 27.3 years old. And for baseball, the reason why he is one of the youngest free agents is a lot of these folks go to arbitration, what have you. Carlos Correa is not bad, Todd. That was a good guess at 28.2 years old. He's very young.
So he's less than a year. Less than a year off.
Dad, your guess of, who did you have?
Well, I was way up.
Trey Turner, yeah, he's getting up there in age, but he is 29.4, and we say getting up there in age. Swanson is 28.8. So a lot of shortstops in that 20 age. So, again, we look at offseason signings. We're really excited. We are less than a month away from pitchers and catchers reporting, and we are less than a month away of them being honest about their offseason injuries. I look forward to folks coming to camp and saying, oh, I went out there to throw the ball a couple of times, and now my elbow feels a little bad, when we all know he did something in the offseason like jet skiing or water skiing when he shouldn't have been doing. And we love those injuries. My other favorite injuries are the ones that show up early and suddenly they have a gash in their finger. And they're like, I was playing with the chain link fence and I don't know what happened. Well, the night before you were trying to open a bottle of wine and you broke it over your hand. So we get tons of
Looking at you, Texas Rangers.
we get tons of fun stories, and the Surprise Arizona, we'll be here covering it live. We're excited here at Swing Banner, and hopefully 1 year, 20 years from now, Todd, me, and Dad, obviously Dad will still be with us. We'll be voting on the Hall of Fame because that's the rights we get as commentators of baseball.
And by the way, congratulations to Scott Rolen and Fred McGriff.
Fred the crime dog. Yes, I love watching him play. And Scott Rolen, again, this isn't a knock on him as a player. It's a knock on the inconsistency of the voters. There's a lot of players that we believe, you'll see these lists. You'll see them when they come out. Anyways, that's all we have for this episode. Final thoughts from you, Dad.
Just getting excited about spring training. Every week that goes by, it's closer. And every team's undefeated. And every team's selling their fans on how much they improved. So it's a good season for lying.
It's a very good season for lying. Todd, what say you?
Anaheim Angels, you should be disgusted with yourself that Mike Trout has to go to a Philadelphia Eagles game and wear a Philadelphia Eagles jersey just to see something happen in the playoffs.
Oh, that's very, very sad.
Stings, doesn't it? It stings, right?
Mike Trout should not be watching the Eagles.
That does not go down easy.
When did the
Anaheim, I'm looking
when
at you.
did the Angels
Or LA, whatever your name is now.
when did the Angels trade him to the Philadelphia Phillies? That would be blockbuster, awesome moment of time. The only thing I would say, closing thoughts from me, is that the Colorado Rockies GM crawled out of the cave of a hole that he is in, and he is commenting on his own division. And he's commenting about how the Padres have holes in their lineup.
Oh, he's so disgusting.
Hello, Colorado, wake up, please. You have so many holes, it's ridiculous. But yeah, please comment on the Padres. He said he believed his team will be competitive. So, unlike the Texas Rangers,
He's smoking the same thing that Chris Bryant is.
they are both smoking it. They will finish 5th of 5 teams in a very competitive division. I look forward to the spring training of the Colorado Rockies as well, and I look forward to that GM getting tossed out at some point in time.
Dick Monfort, cry harder.
There you go.
As John Denver said, Rocky Mountain High in Colorado.
There you go. All right, everybody. Thanks so much. Enjoy it. Have a great rest of your day.
Have a great one.